What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. Sooners Illustrated game preview time. Week 9, Game 8. Oklahoma, number 18, Ole Miss. Saturday morning in Oxford. Tom and I are going to be making the trip down to Mississippi. Here we go. Let's see what Oklahoma's got. They are huge underdogs in this game. I was talking about it on the podcast Thursday with Colin. Not often Oklahoma is near a 3-touchdown underdog ever. And that's where we're at this weekend. Joe John Finley, first game as play caller. A lot of storylines here. You know, from the Ole Miss perspective, they really need this game too. They came into the season with expectations of being certainly a playoff team. Already 2 losses, so they have no margin for error either. A lot of angst in Oxford, so this is just going to be kind of disgruntled fan base bowl, basically. Guys, obviously, I don't think if you're an OU fan, you're really even – I mean, you're always going to hope for wins, but I think you're kind of going to this game just hoping it looks better, right? I mean, they're a huge underdog here. You know, nobody's really given Oklahoma much of a chance in this one. I think you're just more than anything hoping for progress this weekend, right? Just don't get blown out like we've seen the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, kind of like Brent Venables said when he was talking about making the change and, firing Seth Littrell after just 7 games is, you hope this can provide a spark of some sort that a different voice, a different perspective can do something to improve this offense because quite frankly, right now, it can't get much worse than it did the last 2 weeks. The Texas game was bad. The South Carolina game was somehow worse. So you hope for progress. It is going to be tough sledding the rest of the season, like we've discussed, 4 SEC games left, all against ranked teams, 3 of those on the road. The only real layup is next week against an FCS opponent in Maine. But, if you want to make a bowl game, you probably have to figure out a way to win one of these and not bank on, an invite at 5-7 and, rely on APR.
Right.
If you want to get to the postseason, which I'm sure this team wants to, especially if you get a new coordinator in, at the end of the regular season, you have those bowl game practices to get a jump start on next year, really.
For sure.
Improvement is what you want to see. Obviously, like you said, you want to win, but if you can just show some kind of improvement, some pulse on offense, you'll feel better going into the final month of the season.
That's what it is right now, which is, a crazy position for OU to be in. We're just hoping to get by and look better than they have in their previous game, which is incredible what's going on right now. So like Tom said, having that OC change, just trying to have a better offense going out there. I mean, just helping your team out is pretty much what they want to see from Joe John Finley being the play caller now. How's he going to do things? And I think it's an audition for him as well. So we're going to get a lot of chance to see how does he scheme up things? How does he handle those 3rd and long sometimes, those uncomfortable positions on the field, sometimes inside the 10-yard, inside the 10-yard line. How does he going to handle those type of things? So, that's pretty much what it is right now. Just seeing where OU is going to be at, just figuring that out. So let's see what happens with them there.
For sure. I think these final 5 games are kind of, like you guys said, an audition for Joe John, but kind of everyone on the offensive staff, the players, it's kind of everyone the final 5 games to show something. Because I mean, right now I would say everything is kind of up for grabs as far as could be changed at the end of the year going into next year. So a lot to be ironed out over the last 5 games. That starts this weekend and gets another really good team in Ole Miss. Injury report, we have the Wednesday night availability report. Deion Burke's questionable again, so we're going right down the same road we've gone every week. It seems like Gavin Sawchuk listed as doubtful. We had no clue he was even hurt. Brent Venables said he hurt his quad before the game against South Carolina, which is why he didn't see the field. They aren't really using him anyway. It's been pretty much all Javonte Barnes and a little Taylor Tatum. So we'll see what happens there. Otherwise, kind of all the usual suspects from an injury standpoint. So without further ado, guys, keys to the game. What does Oklahoma got to do to find a way to stay in this thing and maybe try to spring an upset here? I think we're starting with James this week, and then I'll do players, and we'll back around to Tom for score prediction at the end. But, James, you can start us off with keys.
Take care of the ball, man. That was the biggest thing last week. I mean, just starting at 21-0 hole, it was too much for OU to come back from, even though they play a little bit better in that second half there. So I think just taking care of the ball. I mean, the reason we all thought Michael Hawkins was the guy at that time was because he didn't turn the ball over and he ended up doing it there. So if they can figure out a way to do that with Jackson Arnold back in there, I mean, like we said, this OU defense can keep him in a lot of games. So if you can scrap your way, to a close game at the end, maybe you can find a way to finish it out. So if you don't turn the ball over, you have that chance with the way this defense plays. So that's where I'm at on it right now.
Yeah, for me, I mean, kind of similar. I mean, the same area. Shorten this game somehow. Find a way to shorten the number of possessions. The more possessions, the worse for Oklahoma on Saturday. Ole Miss has the number 2 total offense in college football, a top 5 passing offense, and a top, I think, 2015 rushing offense, too, top 30 maybe. They're really good everywhere. They're dynamic. Jackson Dart's an elite quarterback. I'll see Lane Kiffin known for his offense. If you're Oklahoma, I think a major goal of this game is make them drive down the field to avoid explosive plays. And then when you're on offense, try to work the clock, run the ball. Like I said, shorten the game. That is your best bet to keeping this thing close. And then as this team knows, and as everyone learned in Auburn, if you can keep it close in the fourth quarter, crazy things can happen. If you're in the game, things, who knows what can happen late, right? That's got to be the approach. So shorten the game. You definitely don't want this game to be, 15 possessions each. That's a recipe for disaster for Oklahoma. So shorten the game and keep it close going to the fourth and kind of let the chips fall where they may after that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as both you guys. For me, you look at Ole Miss's 2 losses. They lost to Kentucky in a low-scoring game, and then to LSU in overtime. Wasn't really I don't want to call it a shootout because neither team cracked 30 points, but it was more of an offensive game. For Oklahoma, you need to follow the Kentucky blueprint as best you can, and what that kind of boils down to is drag Ole Miss down into the muck and just kind of grind it out. That's going to be hard to do because Oklahoma's had trouble running the ball. Ole Miss has been one of the best run defenses in the country. It's going to be hard to sustain drives that way. But if they can limit turnovers and just like you say, keep it close, keep it a low-scoring game, the defense can keep them in it. Now, again, that is a very difficult task because, like you said, Ole Miss has been one of the better offenses in the country.
Yeah.
If Oklahoma's going to win this game, it's got to be a low-scoring game because they're not going to win a shootout. They do not have the firepower this season to win a shootout against Ole Miss.
Just simply don't. Complete agreement there. As far as players to watch, I'll get us started here. I'm going to go with Billy Bowman here for player to watch for me. So I'm always stealing Tom's players to watch. You guys remember in the summer the exchange with Jackson Dart on social media, kind of joking around with him that Dart was at a camp throwing passes and Billy Bowman said, look, that looks like a pick 6 to me or something to that effect. And they kind of exchanged some playful jabs back and forth. I use that as the backdrop to the fact that Oklahoma needs to force turnovers in this game. They didn't against South Carolina. We talked about that. That was not lost on the defense, that they didn't force any turnovers. I mean, I have a hard time envisioning Oklahoma winning this game if the offense has to drive the length of the field over and over. They are going to need at least one short field that they can capitalize for a touchdown, or maybe even just a defensive touchdown straight up. And nobody is more equipped to do that than Billy Bowman. Obviously, he's the best guy on this team. You need a turnover. That's where you look. You need a turnover for points. That's also where you look. So I'm going to go Billy Bowman, big player to watch for me. He's got 5 games left in his last season. He wants to try, and him and Danny Stutzman both doing everything they can to try and turn this thing around before their careers are over. So he's a big one for me. Watching for him to go out and make something happen. And you best believe if he does pick off Jackson Dart, I think he'll enjoy it. We'll put it that way on Saturday as well. So he's a big one for me. Tom, I'm sorry I stole it again.
Yeah. Since Josh took my Billy Bowman pick for those very same reasons. Sure. I was actually before we started recording, I was going back and finding the tweets just to remember what their back and forth was.
Yeah,
it was Jackson Dart was at the Manning Passing Academy, which Jackson Arnold was at, and they were doing a drill on the run, and Billy was like, "Oh, it looks like a pick 6." But I guess kind of going off that, I guess I'll take the low-hanging fruit this week, and I'll go with Jackson Arnold.
Yeah.
He's back in the starting lineup this week. All things considered, looked pretty good last week against South Carolina. Still got sacked 8 times because Oklahoma's offensive line is what it is. But he looked a little bit more confident. He completed 50% of his passes, but 6 of those were drops. So really, his completion percentage was, in the mid-60s, or his adjusted completion percentage, rather, was in the mid-60s. And I'm curious to see what it looks like for him with a full week back of preparing as the guy. He obviously was not very good through those first 4 starts. he talked a lot last week. I thought it was really interesting talking to him about, or listening to him talk about what those 3 weeks as the backup was like for him, and kind of how he did a lot of soul searching and gave him a new perspective. And sometimes, like, when a guy that has the talent and raw ability, if things aren't clicking, sometimes taking a step back helps.
Yeah.
Now the guys around him still need to help him out. And that's hard when you're missing what you're missing at receiver and the offensive line is playing as poorly as it is. But I'm curious to see how he responds now that he kind of has that second chance. It's like we talked about before. When a 5-star quarterback like him gets benched, not often do they get a second chance at that same school. A lot of times they either fizz out or they transfer somewhere else and will have success there. He's getting an opportunity to show that those first 4 games, first 5 stars, if you want to date back to the Alamo Bowl, aren't who he is as a quarterback. Like, not going to let those define his career. So I'm just really eager to see kind of how he responds in an adverse situation.
And that's a good point. Like, transition to what I'm going to say. I think it's Troy Everett in this offensive line. How are they going to respond to the game they put together last week? I mean, 9 sacks, giving up 9 sacks, a program record. I mean, it's just insane for that to happen against them. So we'll see how they bounce back from that, because if they give Jackson Arnold time, we know Jackson Arnold has the arm talent to find his guys and do the things he needs. So they just got to be able to do that. I mean, obviously in the SEC, there's always going to be great defensive lines that they're going to be going against, and they just got to be prepared for that. I mean, that's the challenge of going into this league. We've been saying it all offseason. So let's see how they respond to that, because that was their worst performance. I mean, out of all the games, that was their worst performance, I think, because everybody was relatively healthy that was supposed to be out there, and it just didn't get it done. So how are they going to respond? So that's going to be the player to watch, or players to watch for me.
No, for sure.
That
and what's the 5? I mean,
like, who is it?
Shares big time.
Yeah.
Just trying to find anything. Curious what the actual starting 5 ends up being when this thing kicks off, and does it stay that way as the game goes on?
Hasn't often.
Exactly. So yeah, they're both great picks, obviously. And for Arnold, the story's not yet written. Second chance opportunity, and I think of, it's not an apples to apples, but just going off OU history. And I think of 2020, Spencer Rattler had, kind of a similar spot as Arnold as far as that guy, this, all this pressure, and it wasn't going well, and he got sat down against Texas. He came back later in that game and finished the game. They won that game. He had a great rest of the season. So it's not apples to apples that Arnold sat for a couple of games. But, who knows, right? I mean, sometimes that does help, like Tom said. I'll throw another one in there, too. I mean, I didn't do it because I refuse to just do the same thing every single week, but I'll do it now, I guess. Jacob Jordan for wide receiver. I'm on, like, wide receiver 8 in this little segment of who can be that guy. Was it just a flash in the pan, fluky thing, or is he actually like going to be a part of this thing moving forward? Very curious to see that. So that'll be a big one for me, especially if Deion Burks is again out, which, right. I don't know how you could bank on him playing after the last few weeks. So we'll see how that goes. But any other ones for you guys you want to throw in there before we pick this thing?
Yeah, not a player, but Joe John Finley.
Yeah,
again, never done it. Fruit, but he's going to be calling plays like by him, or not necessarily by him. So he'll be the primary play caller, but it'll be a collaboration. He's going to be the guy that I assume he'll be in the booth, making the calls from there. But yeah, I mean, this, like you said, this is kind of an audition for him, whether it's an audition to be Oklahoma's offensive coordinator next year, or if it's an audition for his next job. He's in the spotlight now. First time he's ever really called a game. He was up there last week alongside Seth Luttrell, which we talked about was kind of telling of the situation. But we've also talked about, like, he's a guy who's been in that veer and shoot tree. He's learned from Jeff Levy. He's learned from Lane Kiffin. He's learned from those guys. And, can he conjure up some things that maybe Jackson Arnold's a little bit more comfortable doing and a little bit more accustomed to, because that's what they recruited him, the system that they recruited him to play in. So obviously all eyes kind of be on those, offense in general, but seeing how Joe John Finley kind of handles this new dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. Since we're throwing more guys out there, I'll go with Jaden Jackson. Highest graded defensive tackle last week, or freshman defensive tackle last week per PFF. Had a really good game on his side of the ball. Can he keep that up? Like, he was recruited, as the dynamic duo with David Stone, and he's kind of just elevated himself each and every week, and it's gotten better as time's going on. So, well, just want to watch, see what he does. I mean, he played really well last week. Let's see what he does this week.
For sure. Gonna be interesting. Big matchup. It's a fun matchup. The Ole Miss offense against Oklahoma's defense, and just Lane Kiffin versus Brent Venables. Kind of just a fun little matchup there. Look forward to see how that shakes out. All right, let's go ahead and pick it. Colin got us started on the Thursday pod. He took Ole Miss 24-13. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Tom, I think you're starting for us here today. What do you got here? Oklahoma, like we said, really big underdog, 20 and a half, depending on where you look, basically 3 touchdowns. What do you think? How can can the Sooners keep this thing close? And where do you go? How does it wind up?
I think if they don't commit turnovers again, they can keep it relatively close. Look, Ole Miss, they've given up at least 20 points in two of their 3 SEC games. They've given up at least 20 points. They shut down South Carolina at 3 points, I believe. But otherwise, Kentucky scored 20. LSU scored 29, I guess it was. I don't think Oklahoma's going to crack 20 points in this one, but I do think they'll look better than they did the last couple of weeks. I think, again, if Oklahoma does not turn the ball over a bunch, like, this defense will keep Ole Miss relatively in check. So I've got Ole Miss 27, Oklahoma 17.
Is it me? I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It's gonna be 24-7 Ole Miss. First time I'm picking against Oklahoma this year. I mean, it's at that point to where I've seen enough from this Oklahoma offense to know it's probably not going to work out here. So that's where I'm at on it. Jackson Arnold getting his start back out there. Really, this game is about building on something. Get something that you can build on to move forward from here and gain some momentum, at least maybe next week as well. So we'll see what happens, but I think it's 24-7. I mean, I've liked Ole Miss for most of the season. I know they had their hiccups that I didn't foresee, but I like Ole Miss in this game. So that's where I'm at.
24-7. Company man, James, with the score there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of all around with you guys too. I think I'm going to land. I'm even just as we're sitting here, kind of going back and forth on how I actually want to go with it. But I'm going to go 27-14, Ole Miss. Yeah, I mean, I think the offense can look a little better as long as they take care of the ball. I think they have a chance to hang in this game somewhat. But yeah, I mean, there's just simply not anything to really give confidence right now that they're going to be able to score enough points to win the game. I feel like I'm going a little too high at 14, to be honest.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm going to go with, 27-14. Then defense will play well, but kind of similar to the last couple of weeks in that Oklahoma's probably going to turn it over somewhere, put them in a tough spot. And you can't keep a really good offense like Ole Miss down forever. And if the offense is not doing well, like we saw against Texas, eventually that you're going to run out of gas, and it's hard to play that way. So 27-14 Ole Miss. I think Oklahoma covers the big number, but you got to favor the Rebels to win this thing at home, I would think. And Oklahoma will come back to Norman at 500, believe it or not. So
yeah, like here's my thing. Like, as good as Ole Miss's offense has been, like, a lot of that was like padded.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
for sure.
In SEC play, they're only averaging like 23.3 points per game. So like they haven't been as good in SEC play, and like,
yeah,
really, like, the best defense they faced so far was LSU, and that was strangely the most points that they scored in an SEC game. But again, in overtime. So I think Oklahoma's defense is going to do a decent job of limiting Ole Miss. Again, it's just like that caveat. Like, if the offense can avoid turnovers, like, they can maybe keep this one closer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're at a point in the season where, like, now we can go off of what's been happening this year, and I think for both sides, it's pretty well common. It's 24-7. I thought was a good number just because of what Ole Miss has been averaging and what Oklahoma's offense has been putting up. So, like, I mean, giving OU 7 is still, I guess, kind of out of the way, but we'll see going into this one. It's going to be a tough battle for OU. Keeping it short and keeping it slim, I think, is the main goal here.
I mean, they're averaging less than one offensive touchdown per game in SEC play.
Less than.
So that tells you what I mean, right? That's
yeah.
I'm doing.
No, I know. Yeah, you're right.
One against Tennessee, one against Auburn, one against South Carolina, and none against Texas. I can do that math. That's less than one a game. So yeah, I mean, It is what it is. We'll see what happens, though. Looking forward to it. It'll be cool seeing out there. Looks like the weather's going to be great. We'll see. I imagine there'll still be a really good atmosphere, and I've never been out there. Tom has. So, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. Looking forward to it. Only the second time the teams have ever played. First time ever in Oxford. So be a little different. And we look forward to getting over there. We'll have full coverage, of course, as always, on Oklahoma.247sports.com, all leading up to this game. And, of course, during and then full post-game reaction afterward, both on the site as well as here on the YouTube channel. Obviously, us, along with Brent Venables, coordinators, which will be Joe John Finley now. I didn't even think about that. We're going to talk to Joe John after the game. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, the players and all that good stuff as we figure out and react to whatever happens in this one. That's it for now. For Tom Green, James E. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys Saturday afternoon from Oxford, Mississippi.